I'm really in deep sorrow sending this to you, sir. Hell is not what many people think. It's beyond anything we have been told as humans. Jesus took me on a journey to hell. The things I saw are terrifying. But what is more terrifying are the set of hell meant for those who commit this 5 sexual sin. They were treated brutally. Today's experience was sent to us by a sister. Kindly stay to the end to understand her experience. My name is Kyella Rambo. I remember it clearly, like it happened just moments ago. I had been praying deeply, asking God for guidance in my life. My heart was sincere, though I had no idea what was coming. As I prayed, something unusual happened. A strange calmness swept over me, but at the same time, I felt an odd tension in the air. My eyes were closed, but I could sense the room shifting somehow, like the space around me wasn't the same anymore. Then, without warning, I felt an intense pull, as if I were being lifted from within myself. The sensation was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. It was not painful, but it was startling. One moment, I was kneeling on the floor, and the next, I was floating above my own body. I could see myself, still there, still praying, yet I was detached, watching everything from a higher perspective. I tried to speak, to cry out, but no words came. I wasn't afraid, though. Somehow, I knew this was God's doing. I could feel His presence, strong and reassuring, as if saying, "This is part of my plan." As I hovered above my body, the walls of my room seemed to dissolve. I was no longer confined by the space around me. I felt myself rising higher and higher, as if being drawn by an unseen force. Below me, the earth began to fade. It wasn't sudden. It was gradual, like a fog lifting to reveal something greater. I looked down and saw familiar sights, the streets I'd walked, the homes I'd known, but they became smaller and smaller until they were no longer visible. A strange silence enveloped me. It wasn't the silence of emptiness, but a profound stillness, as though I had entered a realm where time and sound didn't exist in the same way. I felt weightless, yet fully aware. My thoughts were sharper than ever, and my senses seemed heightened. The colors around me were vivid, unlike anything on earth. Suddenly, I noticed a light in the distance. It wasn't like the light of the sun or a lamp. It was pure and radiant, pulling me closer. As I approached, I realized it wasn't just light. It was life itself. It felt warm, welcoming, and full of love. But before I could reach it, I was stopped. A vast expanse lay before me, separating the light from where I stood. It was like a barrier, but not one made of walls or gates. Instead, it was a realm of its own, dark, chaotic, and heavy. I looked around and saw shapes and figures moving in the shadows. Some were distant, barely visible, while others were closer, their forms unfamiliar. I could hear whispers, cries, and echoes, but they were faint, as if coming from far away. I knew this was the spiritual realm, a place where the physical and the eternal intertwined. The moment I reached the edge of the spiritual realm, a dreadful feeling swept over me. Before me stood an enormous structure, vast and foreboding, like a fortress carved out of darkness itself. The entrance was a gaping void, pulsating with an ominous red glow. It wasn't just a door, it was alive, shifting and groaning, as if the very gates were aware of who approached. As I entered, I was met with a horrifying sight. A massive funnel that seemed to spiral downward endlessly. It was like a vortex, drawing in souls from every direction. The walls of the funnel were jagged and glowing fantly. I could see countless souls being pulled toward its center, helpless against the force. They didn't walk or run. They were dragged, screaming and writhing, some clawing at the edges in a desperate attempt to resist. Others appeared resigned, their faces blank, as if they had given up hope. The deeper the funnel went, the darker and more chaotic it became. A dreadful noise filled the air, a mixture of wails, growls, and a low rumble like the earth groaning under unimaginable weight. At the base of the funnel, I saw a long line of souls standing in silence. It stretched as far as the eye could see, each person waiting their turn. At the end of the queue stood a towering figure cloaked in shadows, the angel of death. Its presence was overwhelming, radiating both authority and dread. The angel held a massive book, its pages glowing faintly as names appeared and disappeared in rapid succession. With every name, the angel pointed, directing souls to different paths leading deeper into the abyss. Beyond the queue, I saw a terrifying region, a vast, volcanic landscape covered in rivers of molten lava. The ground was cracked and scorched, spewing flames and smoke into the air. The heat was intense, but it wasn't like the heat of fire on earth. This was a burning that pierced deeper, as if it could reach into the soul itself. In the distance, I saw figures wading through the lava, their faces contorted in agony. They tried to climb out, but the molten waves pulled them back. Others stood on jagged rocks, their bodies covered in burns, yet unable to escape. The reception area was massive, divided into different regions, each more horrifying than the last. It was a place of constant motion, souls being sorted, demons scurrying, and the air filled with an unbearable cacophony of suffering. I noticed that the chaos was not random. Everything was organized, each soul directed with precision. There was an eerie sense of order amidst the torment, as if the entire realm operated under strict rules. To the side of the reception area were 12 enormous gates, each marked with strange symbols that glowed faintly in the darkness. These gates were unlike anything I had ever seen, towering structures that seemed to pulse with a life of their own. As the angel of death pointed, demons would escort souls to one of these gates. The gates opened briefly, revealing glimpses of what lay beyond, terrifying prisons, each unique in its torment. Some were filled with fire, others with freezing darkness. The cries from within were deafening, yet the gates closed as quickly as they opened, leaving only echoes behind. Among the demons were figures I can only describe as priests. They wore dark, ceremonial robes adorned with unholy symbols, and their presence commanded authority even among the demons. These priests seemed to oversee the process, ensuring that every soul was placed according to their sins. They chanted in a language I couldn't understand, their voices deep and menacing. As they spoke, the air around them grew darker, and the souls trembled in their presence. The final stage of the reception was the sorting of souls. The angel of death read from the massive book, announcing each soul's sins with unwavering clarity. As the sins were spoken, the soul's torment seemed to intensify, their cries growing louder. The priests and demons worked together, dragging the souls to the gates that matched their sins. It was a horrifyingly efficient system, with no room for escape or error. Every soul was placed precisely where it belonged, their eternal fate sealed. After leaving the reception area, I was led into the deeper parts of hell. Here, the atmosphere changed. It became darker, more oppressive. The weight of sorrow was no longer just felt. It seemed to seep into my very being. Hell was not a chaotic abyss as I once imagined. It was structured, vast, and organized with horrifying precision. It was a realm meticulously divided, each area serving its own grim purpose. I could sense that every inch of this place had been designed to reflect justice in its most terrifying form. I stood before a network of 12 massive corridors, each stretching endlessly into darkness. These corridors were gateways to the prisons of hell, 351 of them in total. As I gazed down one corridor, I could see countless doors, each one pulsing faintly as if alive. Each corridor represented a category of sin, and each prison within it was tailored to specific offenses. The torment within each chamber matched the gravity and nature of the sins committed on earth. I couldn't see inside most of them, but I could hear the agonized cries of those trapped within. At one point, a door creaked open, and I glimpsed inside. It was a chamber of fire, but this fire was not like anything I had seen on earth. It didn't just burn the flesh, it consumed the very essence of the soul, leaving nothing but raw agony. The sight was unbearable, and I quickly turned away. The corridors and prisons were divided into territories, each ruled by a demon of high rank. These demons acted as overseers, ensuring that the torments were carried out without interruption. Their presence was commanding, their forms grotesque and intimidating. Each territory had its unique character, shaped by the sins it housed. Some were fiery and chaotic, filled with constant movement and noise. Others were eerily quiet, their silence more terrifying than any scream. In one territory, I saw souls being endlessly weighed down by massive chains, their faces twisted in anguish as they struggled to move. The assembly areas were massive halls filled with countless souls. They stood in rows, waiting in silence for their turn to face judgment. The air was thick with tension, the weight of anticipation almost unbearable. Demons moved among the souls, calling them forward one by one. Some tried to resist, pleading for mercy, but their cries fell on deaf ears. Others stood silently, their heads bowed in resignation. I noticed that the sorting process was precise. Each soul was carefully examined and placed according to the weight and nature of its sins. The system was terrifyingly efficient, leaving no room for error. I was led into a vast region referred to as the continent of sexual sins. It was unlike anything I had seen before. The air was dense and heavy, tinged with a strange, suffocating heat. The land stretched endlessly, its terrain a mix of burning sand and jagged rocks. Moans and cries of torment echoed from every corner, creating an atmosphere of unrelenting despair. At the entrance stood a massive gate, dark and foreboding, etched with twisted, grotesque carvings. It bore symbols of indulgence, betrayal, and lust, each one pulsating with a sinister energy. This gate served as the threshold to the prisons within. I watched as souls approached the gate, their faces etched with terror. Each one was met by demonic guards, who sneered and mocked them. The guards seemed to revel in the pain of those entering, dragging them forcefully through the gate. In this place of despair, I felt the presence of Jesus, his sorrow so palpable it pierced through the darkness. It was not the sorrow of anger but of heartbreak, as though he mourned deeply for the lost souls who had ignored his warnings. I recalled the teachings of purity and the sacredness of the body, meant to be honored as a temple of the Holy Spirit. Here, the consequences of disregarding those teachings were laid bare. His warnings had been given out of love, yet so many had chosen the fleeting pleasures of sin over eternal joy. One chamber I was shown housed those who had engaged in fornication and premarital sex. The torment here was deeply symbolic. Souls were chained together, yet their chains burned with an unbearable fire. They struggled to break free, but the more they fought, the tighter the chains grew. I could hear their cries of regret, their pleas for another chance to live differently. But here, the opportunity for change was gone. Another area revealed the torment of those who had indulged in lustful dreams. Their dreams, once a private escape, were now made tangible. I saw souls engulfed in swirling, nightmarish visions of their own making, unable to wake from the torment. Each vision replayed their secret fantasies, now distorted into grotesque and horrifying forms. What had seemed harmless in life had become their eternal nightmare. The prisons of the mind were no less horrifying. I saw souls tormented by the very thoughts they had entertained in life. Immoral fantasies, perversions, and unchecked desires became living entities, attacking and consuming them relentlessly. Overseeing this area was a demon whose form was both mesmerizing and revolting. It represented temptation itself, whispering lies and justifications into the ears of its prisoners. It mocked them for their choices, twisting their guilt into an endless cycle of torment. One prison was dedicated to those who had corrupted their souls through what they had chosen to see. This included pornography, voyeurism, and any indulgence in visually impure acts. The souls here were forced to relive those images, but now they were distorted, grotesque, and filled with terror. Their eyes, which had once been instruments of sin, became their instruments of torment. They could not close them or look away, no matter how much they screamed or begged. A separate chamber highlighted the influence of the media. Here were those who had been drawn into spiritual defilement through films, shows, and other visual content that glorified sin. They were surrounded by screens that played their lives back to them, interwoven with the destructive effects their actions had caused in the world. I was taken to an area where the expansion of hell's territories was evident. It was a ceaseless operation, as if the very nature of hell demanded growth to accommodate the ever-increasing number of souls. I saw demons digging with tools that glowed within. One of the most terrifying revelations was that some pits were not meant for the dead. These pits were prepared for the living, those still walking on earth, yet already marked by their choices. I saw demons carving names into the walls of these pits, each one corresponding to a living person. These were individuals who had chosen a path of wickedness, refusing to repent. Their pit awaited them, a chilling reminder of the spiritual reality connected to their earthly lives. I encountered the soul of a politician whose life had been marked by corruption and deceit. This person had used power for personal gain, manipulating systems and people for profit. In one area, I witnessed a shocking connection between earth and hell. Human sins, when committed, seemed to send materials to hell. Acts of hatred, greed, lust, and violence were like raw materials, used to construct new prisons and tools of torment. I saw dark figures collecting these materials, which seemed to appear out of thin air. Each act of sin on earth strengthened the kingdom of darkness, contributing to its expansion. I saw the heartbreaking response of many souls in hell. Some fell to their knees, crying out in anguish as they realized they had been rejected. Others turned away, their pride and rebellion still intact, even in the face of eternal suffering. A figure suddenly appeared so bright, said a word and disappeared. Immediately I saw him. I knew instantly that it was Jesus Christ. When he appeared he said, "Time of grace," and then disappear. An understanding came upon me. I knew that it was a season where humanity had the opportunity to turn to him, to accept salvation freely given. I heard a lament and displease and warned of how this time was being misused. People were consumed by worldly desires, distracted by materialism, and indifferent to their spiritual condition. They have the truth before them, he said, yet they choose the fleeting pleasures of this world over the eternal joy I offer. The scenes that accompanied his words were vivid. I saw individuals on earth, indulging in sin without a thought of the consequences. Some laughed at the idea of judgment, while others remained apathetic, believing there was always more time. The final message was clear. Humanity's only hope lay in complete dependence on God. No effort, no amount of good deeds, and no earthly achievement could secure salvation. It was a gift, freely given but requiring humility and surrender to receive. It's at this moment I came back to myself. All right, friends. This brings us to the end of today's experience. Kindly like and share this video with your friends and families. Kindly subscribe to our channel and turn on your notification bell icon to be the first to get updated anytime we upload a new experience sent to us. Remain blessed.